Hey everyone, I'm Keygor the Robot, and welcome to my new channel. Today we're going to be going through the Ruby Gloom Iceberg created by me. I absolutely love Ruby Gloom, and I feel I can give some valuable insight about her history. This iceberg starts with the most well-known topics about Ruby Gloom, and as we dive deeper, we will get into the most obscure topics. I dug deep, and made sure to include some very obscure ones near the bottom. I'm sure most, if not any of you, have heard about. I'm sure we all know how an iceberg video works, so with that being said, let's get right into the video. Tier 1. Now, there isn't much on this top tier, as Ruby Gloom is an already pretty obscure but well enough known show in and of itself, but I will explain these first two entries in detail for your hopeful enjoyment. Here's what I felt was appropriate to put on this first tier. Martin Chu. Martin Chu is the creator of Ruby Gloom. He is an Asian American artist who would go on to have the idea for the character in 2001, later designing and licensing the character to Mighty Fine, a US company, which would then make merchandise and sell it at Hot Topic stores. Martin also helped design other characters you might have heard of before, such as the characters from Ni Hao Kai Lan and Kick Buttowski, and also created other apparel characters, also for Mighty Fine, such as French Kitty, Bad Cat, these fairy characters, a Fly Girl character, and this other Molgoth adjacent character. By 2005, from the Ruby Gloom merchandise, Martin Chu's style guide was used as art direction to create the show we all know and love today. Ruby Gloom Cartoon Series 2006. I won't be explaining much about the actual show here, since this is more of a Ruby Gloom history in general type of video, rather than just about the show itself, but I will give a brief synopsis. Ruby Gloom is an animated series produced by Nelvana in 2006. It involves the adventures of Ruby, a gothic girl who has an optimistic view on life, who lives in a Victorian mansion in the fictional town of Gloomsville, along with her friends Misery, Skullboy, Iris, Frank and Len, Poe, Scaredy Bat, Boo Boo, and of course her most loyal friends, Doom Kitty and Mr. Buns, as they get into hijinks. The show aired from October 13th, 2006 to June 1st, 2008 on the Canadian children's channel YTV. Then in 2014, the show was put onto Netflix in the US, which is when I first watched it, and aired there for a few years before getting taken off. Interestingly, according to Martin, the reason it didn't air on American networks is because they thought the show's concept was too frightening for children. I really don't see how that's the case, to be quite honest. These characters are very charming and adorably designed. At least now, you can watch the full episodes of Ruby Gloom right here on YouTube for free. Tier 2. This is knowledge any casual Ruby Gloom fan would know. Gene O'Brien. Gene O'Brien, or used mononymously as Gene, is the musician behind the Ruby Gloom theme song and provided the singing voice for Misery, singing songs such as Stop It, and Trainwreck. She has made music for several recording artists, such as Great Big Sea, Serena Ryder, Rez, etc. Her self-produced songs have also been used in commercials, as well as television programs such as Ruby Gloom, of course. She was also the singer in the band Cookie Duster. I recommend giving her music a listen. She's very talented at what she does. Show and merch Ruby are different. Show and merch Ruby are actually quite different from each other. Merch Ruby had a more darker, gothic aesthetic, and was in a similar but different outfit from the Ruby we know from the show, occasionally being shown in other outfits, such as these. While Show Ruby was toned down a bit for children watching. Show Ruby also had different outfits sometimes, depending on the setting she was in, but for the most part had her iconic black dress and striped socks. Starting in around 2010, Ruby, along with other characters from the show, such as Skullboy and Scaredy Bat, actually had even more outfits on the Ruby Gloom website, which we will discuss more in a later entry. Under the eCard section, a bunch of the images of the eCards are easily findable either on Wayback Machine screenshots of the website from 2010 or Pinterest. Misery is the most popular. This entry refers to the fact that despite the show being called Ruby Gloom, the character Misery is one of, if not the, most popular characters in the series due to many factors. Her design and personality are key reasons why people like her so much. Mighty Fine merchandise. We've talked a little bit about this before, but now I'll actually talk a bit more about it. The Ruby Gloom Mighty Fine merchandise was pretty diverse, consisting of clothing, stationery items, bags, calendars, etc. Most household items you can think of, Ruby probably had merchandise of at one point. There are some pieces of Ruby Gloom merchandise, however, that are either extremely rare or hard to find, which we will discuss more in later entries. Tier 3. This is knowledge that a more engaged Ruby Gloom fan would know, but not too engaged. Ruby Gloom books. This refers to the 2 Ruby Gloom children's books that were made. The first book, Ruby Gloom's Keys to Happiness, was first published in October of 2004, illustrated by none other than Martin, and authored by Clam Lynch. It's a simple read that contains many awesome Ruby Gloom artworks, and describes a bunch of well-known sayings and phrases, and reveals their unintended meanings. This is also the book that shows Misery for the first time, which shows her early design, and what it looked like before the show. It's a quick, fun read. The second book, Ruby Gloom's Guide to Friendship, was published in May of 2005, authored by Matt Reiser and also illustrated by Martin. This book introduces us to her and her other friends, such as Iris, Doom Kitty, Mr. Buns, Skullboy, Scaredy Bat, Poe, and Boo Boo. Interestingly, Misery, Frank, and Len are not listed as friends in her diary entries, although they are main characters in the show. Frank and Len are in this book, however, which is where they show up for the first time. We get to see their early designs before the show. There is also a character in this book named Jealousy that was never used in the final show, which is also quite interesting. Every other character besides her was used, making her practically a lost and forgotten character. It would have been cool to see what she would have been like in the show. As for the book, Ruby then goes on to list qualities of what makes a good friend throughout the rest of the book. An interesting page shows that for the early concept of Skullboy, his skull is a mask, and is shown pulling it off, revealing what Iris interprets to be a scary, ugly face, but Ruby is open-minded and loves it. This concept was scrapped for the final show, however, making Skullboy a full skeleton rather than a kid wearing a mask. This is a great and simple book as well. There was also a 4-part series of Ruby Gloom novels post-show, authored by Rebecca McCarthy and Deirdre Black. These seem to have been stories that mimic the formula of the actual episodes, but in book form. I've never read these, but I wouldn't mind trying to find copies in the future. Ruby Gloom website. Now this is only on the 3rd tier because the website would be advertised on every piece of Ruby Gloom merchandise back then, and even to this day they are still putting the dead website domain on merchandise sold at Hot Topic, which is a bit odd. Maybe they plan to reopen the website, who's really to say. Anyway, if we go to the Wayback Machine, we can see that there were many eras to the website, dating back all the way to 2002 until the very last era in 2010. The 2002 era was rather rudimentary, showing an icon of Ruby's face amongst 5 other Mighty Fine licensed characters. Clicking on the icon of Ruby leads to nothing, and this area is sadly lost media. The 2003 to 2006 eras were arguably the most interesting, due to the fact that they showed flash animated interactable introductions upon entering the website. 2003 to 2006 were also the eras of the Ruby Gloom forum, which contained many things that are now lost media, such as most photos that no longer load in the gallery, the Mr. Buns avatar designer, Ruby's raffle, and many more. The 2007 era was when they started advertising the show, where you could watch videos, download icons, send e-cards, and look at character bios. The final era, being the 2010 era, had a much more Frutiger Metro vibe to it, which you could do the same. The 2010 era of the site was actually on the internet for 9 years, until it eventually got taken down in 2019. There was also an unused website concept art created by Martin, which he uploaded on DeviantArt on October 10th, 2011. All of the pictures and objects shown in the image were meant to be animated and interactive. Ruby Gloom Pilot 2003. This is in reference to the Ruby Gloom Pilot animation from 2003. It had a darker tone compared to the finished show, and was also in that early creepy 3D CGI animation style. I don't know why, but for some reason, this is the only piece of Ruby Gloom media that freaks me out. Maybe it's the early CGI, maybe it's the music, maybe it's the low quality of the video, I'm not sure. It's just kind of uncanny all around. But the way it cuts to black after she just stares at the camera for a few seconds at the very end is pretty creepy for some reason. I am sort of glad they didn't use this rendition of Ruby for any other animated media. I still have a soft spot for it though. Tier 4. This is knowledge that a well-engaged Ruby Gloom fan would know. Ruby Gloom was big in Japan. This is referring to the fact that Ruby Gloom was very popular in Japan. On February 10th, 2008, Ruby Gloom aired up to the early 2010s on Cartoon Network Japan. Then, on October 26, 2008, the Kawasaki Halloween Parade was held, which is one of the biggest Halloween events in Japan. It was led by Nana Kitade, who is a Japanese singer that we will speak more about in a later entry, dressed as Ruby Gloom. She performed at the parade, where over 500 people watched, and later went on to hold a handshake and autograph session, which was immediately sold out in an instant. There was also a Ruby Gloom cafe in Shinjuku, Japan that had many Ruby Gloom decorations, merchandise, food, and sweets. The merchandise was exclusive to Japan, and you can't get it anywhere else, unless you're lucky enough to find it on sites like eBay. I've only ever seen one listing of the Japanese merchandise on eBay, and it's sold out now sadly. Also, there was a DVD box set released exclusively in Japan titled Ruby Gloom's Bible, which contained every episode from the series. It's interesting to see the art contained inside of this as well. Hot Topic reviving Ruby Gloom merch in 2023. In 2023, Mighty Fine revived the Ruby Gloom license over 20 years later, and now Hot Topic is back to selling Ruby Gloom merch again to this day. This is really good for people who can't get expensive Ruby Gloom merchandise from the past, because usually old Ruby merch goes for quite a lot nowadays. You'd have to be quick though, because the merch at Hot Topic seems to sell out pretty fast. I recommend going to Depop or Mercari to find resold Ruby Gloom merch for semi-decent prices if you're wanting to find some of these newer shirts. Heck, you might even find older merch as well. Martin Shu expressing interest in Ruby Gloom reboot. This is just referring to the simple fact that Martin is interested in a Ruby Gloom reboot. On September 19th, 2022, he tweeted, "I'd love to work on a Ruby Gloom reboot. She's stayed quite relevant in the past 20 years, no? It would really be awesome to see that happen, as I'm a massive fan of the series, and the franchise as a whole." Extremely rare Ruby Gloom dolls. This is referring to the extremely rare and hard to find Ruby Gloom dolls that were produced in around 2001. There are a bunch of different variations of Ruby holding different items, and they vary in size. There are small Ruby Gloom dolls, including one keychain which will also count as a small doll, and a couple of other big ones. The bigger ones seem to be a lot more rare, but the smaller ones are very rare as well. These rarely pop up on sites like eBay and Mercari and are fairly sought after, and usually go for $100 if you're lucky, to even as high as $500 or more. The less, but still pretty rare Doom Kitty doll I've seen pop up a lot more, and it usually averages around $80 to $200. Being as rare as these dolls are, I see why the prices are so high, but even then it's pretty outrageous. Luckily, in around 2022, I was actually able to get 2 Ruby Gloom dolls, a small one and a big one. I will admit, I spent a pretty penny on them, but I felt it was worth it, as I need anything Ruby Gloom related in my life, and I'm a proud owner of these 2 dolls. Ruby Gloom alternate theme song. The Ruby Gloom alternate theme song is an official alternate theme song to Ruby Gloom that never got used for any official material. The interesting thing is, though, No one really knows where it comes from or who made it. Under a post made by user Aaron14564848 on What's That Song, user Nana Denson explained that a commenter on an upload of the Ruby Gloom theme song on YouTube claimed that it was sung by the voice actor of Len, Jeremy Harris. This information apparently used to be on the TV Tropes page for the show under the trivia section, but was later removed, so therefore cannot be verified. If we go to Jeremy's IMDb page, we can read in the biography that he has experience with theater, he was nominated for a Gemini Award for his work on Ruby Gloom, and has interviewed musicians. This lead could prove that the singer of the alternate Ruby Gloom theme song is Jeremy, but unless we get answers directly from him confirming that he did sing it, I don't think the origins of the song will ever be found, sadly. I've tried comparing Jeremy's singing in Hairless the Musical from the show to the alternate theme song as well, and while they do sound a bit similar, it's really hard to tell. What do you think?
Not an idle boy, we're not trying to be coy, life is too hard to enjoy. And they call her Ruby Gloom.
A bit unrelated, but while I was researching, I actually found out that Jeremy Harris, the voice actor of Len, is married to Stacey DePass, the voice actor of Iris, so I thought that was pretty cool knowledge to share. Nana Kitade. Nana Kitade is a Japanese singer-songwriter and musician. She was the lead singer of the band The Teenage Kissers, and has also had success being a solo artist, model, actress, and fashion designer. She made the ending theme song for the Japanese version of Ruby Gloom in 2008, titled Siren. She, under the pseudonym Ruby Gloom, would then go on to release a single with the songs Siren and My Treasure. The single was produced by former Megadeth guitarist Marty Friedman. The CD contained the two songs, along with the instrumentals for both of them. The limited release of the CD contained a DVD featuring a full-length Siren music video featuring clips from the show, and an interview with Nana herself. There was also a music video not released on the DVD showing her and other costume performers performing as the characters. As mentioned with Gene O'Brien, Nana Kitade is also a very talented musician, and I highly recommend her music. Deleted Mighty Fine Sample Animation by Alligator Tub Productions. This is in reference to a deleted short Ruby Gloom animation made for Mighty Fine by Alligator Tub Productions, originally uploaded on August 6th, 2012. The video depicts Skullboy, who is voiced by Andrew Stein. Yeah, that Andrew Stein. He was also a writer, storyboarder, and musician for the short, sadly. If you know what he did, you know. We do not need him tarnishing the good name of Ruby Gloom. The video depicts Skullboy trying to launch Poe out of a slingshot, and Ruby telling him it's a bad idea. It seems to be an Angry Birds parody. As for Alligator Tub Productions themselves, they were a small team of creators that disbanded years ago. They used to make My Little Pony animations which mimic the style of the show fairly well. Since the team disbanded, only one person has access to the original channel, which is now called OK and the WM. This person would go on to tease revivals that would never happen, and even go as far as to delete entire videos from their hard drive on camera, and finally delete every video on the channel itself. Luckily, in 2023, the YouTube channel Deleted Brony Videos Archive would go on to re-upload every single Alligator Tub Productions video, including this Ruby Gloom animation, saving it from becoming lost media. I would have never gotten this information if it wasn't for the user Solus here on YouTube, so all credit to this person for digging it up. Unofficial Russian Ruby Gloom game. This is referring to the obscure Russian Ruby Gloom fan game titled Ruby Gloom Bad Hair Day. It was presumably created by Zucchero RG in 2010, and used to be hosted on Mega Upload before that site got taken down. It also used to be on an unidentified Russian website which linked to the Mega Upload file. The game almost became lost media until the user Purple Maple Leaf on YouTube made a video in 2016 explaining that she actually had the game, found it by looking through old files on her computer, and proceeded to make a review of the game. From there, she posted a new link in her description. The game was created in Game Maker 8, and starts off with a screenshot from the episode Hairless the Musical Part 2 with a menu. Upon pressing enter, it gives you some kind of story in Russian, and proceeds to spawn you in a graveyard map with spiders attacking you. You then make your way to Ruby's house, and from there the chaos starts to ensue. It uses screenshots of the actual show for textures, and has very slow controls. Touching anything apparently makes you die instantly, and random music from the show plays at random times in the background, and you can't turn it off either. The game seems to be very hard to beat, as it doesn't tell you what to do. If anyone has beaten the game or knows what happens when you beat it, please let me know in the comments. I will put the download link in the description as well. Just be careful if you do decide to download it, as this link is very old and could potentially be harmful to your computer. Ruby Gloom Magic 8 Ball. This was just a silly piece of Ruby Gloom merchandise that I thought would warrant its own entry. This Magic 8 Ball was themed around Ruby Gloom and would give Ruby-like responses to questions you would ask it, such as, "Not in this lifetime," or, "If you think happy thoughts." On the top of the box it says, "Ask the Ruby Gloom Magic 8 Ball for your favorite gloomy answers." It seems to have been produced in 2004 and was produced by Sababa Toys. I don't know who came up with this idea, but it sure is cute, that's for sure. Something about it's kinda charming. I would love to have this in my Ruby Gloom collection. Nathan Cabrera Ruby Gloom playset. This was a collaboration playset between Martin Shu, artist Nathan Cabrera, and Mighty Fine from 2004. This playset was limited to 5,000 pieces, and is actually somehow quite easy to find on eBay, albeit very expensive. These sell for around $80 to $300. One thing you'll notice is that this seems to be the only piece of Ruby Gloom merchandise to be based off of the pilot design from 2003. Ruby Gloom statue. In around 2010, there was an unknown amount of 4-foot Ruby Gloom statues which were being made. These were presumably made to be used as displays in stores like Hot Topic, although I'm not sure since information about these is pretty scarce. One is kept in Martin's studio, and one was sold on OfferUp in around 2018 for $80 by a man named Jeff P. Oddly enough, the image on the listing shows another Ruby right beside the one being sold, just barely out of frame. It also looks like they were being kept in some sort of warehouse or workshop as well, judging by the picture. Maybe Jeff was one of the manufacturers of these Ruby statues? We don't know. But one of the statues was sold to a user on TikTok named ToonBBs, and she uploaded a video showcasing it. I would absolutely love to get my hands on one of these if possible, and to ToonBBs, you are super lucky for owning a piece of Ruby Gloom history. Tier 5. Now this is where things start to get obscure. Even well-engaged Ruby Gloom fans might not know these topics. Martin Shu not getting paid from new Ruby Gloom merch at Hot Topic. On September 19th, 2023, Martin Shu made a tweet explaining that he never got paid for any of the new Ruby Gloom merchandise, or hardly any Ruby Gloom merchandise after he left Mighty Fine. He stated, "Hey, looks like my Ruby Gloom art is back in at Hot Topic since 2002. Should I get paid for any of it? Because no one is paying me." And in a follow-up tweet he replied, "This may be a surprise, but I never got paid for Ruby Gloom after leaving Mighty Fine. As a 21-year-old at my first job, I potentially signed a work-for-hire agreement. Potentially, because I honestly can't remember. That said, wouldn't it be decent for creators to get paid for their work?" Many people were angry at Hot Topic and Mighty Fine, and they retweeted at them to get them to hopefully have some sort of settlement. Martin then made another post on September 28th, 2023, stating, "Update, looks like at Hot Topic saw your retweets, and reached out to the middleman who's working with Mighty Fine, who declined my intent to build a new partnership to get creators paid for their artwork. So as today, I'm still not getting paid for Ruby Gloom. Cute tease though." This is incredibly scummy of Mighty Fine, and I feel really bad for Martin. After all of the hard work he's put into his art over the many years he's worked for them, Mighty Fine essentially decides to betray him. None of this was Martin's fault. This just goes to show to make sure to get paid for your work and support independent creators. I too have been in similar situations as an artist, and it truly is not fun when your work essentially gets stolen. Japanese Ruby Gloom websites. There were a couple of Japanese Ruby Gloom websites that are of note. One was called rubygloom.jp, which was based and flashed and lost almost in its entirety. The only active Japanese website that is still up to this day is surprisingly a Sony Music website from 2008, almost completely intact since then, which seemingly advertised Nana Kitade's Ruby Gloom CD. All other pages on that site aside from the home page are completely gone, with only the header text showing above each page. However, if you go to the Wayback Machine, you can see that the other pages work to an extent. Going to the information page shows a whole other modern-looking website, also related to Nana Kitade Ruby Gloom stuff, which shows news, media, videos, and more. However, nothing on the media and video pages work anymore. The discography page just lists what's on the Nana Kitade CD. The biography page just lists bios about each character. The BBS page was interesting, BBS meaning Bulletin Board System. This was seemingly a bulletin board where kids could write messages to either Nana or Ruby, which is pretty cool. The download page doesn't work on any screenshot of the website, with coming soon being in what would have been any downloadable content's place no matter what. The mobile tab might have had something to do with mobile wallpapers, and the final page, which translates to ringtone, listed a bunch of ringtones with different variations of siren that you used to be able to buy, these all being lost media. It was interesting seeing what the Japanese side of the internet was like for Ruby Gloom. Lost dubs. There were many dubs of Ruby Gloom aired in other countries, many dubs being lost in almost their entirety. We currently do not have full access to the Arabic, Bulgarian, Hebrew, Korean, Norwegian, Russian, Argentinian Spanish, Tamil, Thai, Turkish, or Ukrainian dubs of the show. Surprisingly, there are 3 localized title cards for the show, with them being the Argentinian Spanish, Norwegian, and Hebrew versions of the Ruby Gloom logo. We have some clips of the Argentinian Spanish dub, but they're in extremely low quality, and we have the openings of the Norwegian and Hebrew dubs, but that's it. Lost Tago German Ruby Gloom Flash Games. Tago was a children's programming block on the channel Super RTL in Germany that played many cartoons from around the world. On October 6th, 2007, Ruby Gloom first aired on Tago. The German dub originally ran for 24 episodes, skipped the 11th and 12th episodes for some reason, and ended its run on December 30th, 2007. A year later, reruns of the show would play, finally airing the missing 11th and 12th episodes. The final time Ruby Gloom aired on the channel was October 23rd, 2009. Around this time, they had 2 Ruby Gloom Flash games on their website, tago.de, and these games are almost completely gone from the internet, and are now lost media. The games were titled Save Ruby's Diary and Ruby's Party Room. The only game we have footage of is Save Ruby's Diary, uploaded on April 9th, 2010 by user Gangrene425, which is of extremely low quality. The video contains gameplay for Save Ruby's Diary, and 2 other Ruby Gloom dress-up games which seem to be fan-made and not official. These 2 dress-up games also seem to be lost media as well, as I cannot find anything outside of this video proving their existence. Anyway, in Save Ruby's Diary, the gameplay is that of a simple platformer. It seems that each time the player jumps, Ruby goes higher little by little. We are then shown some kind of death screen in German when Ruby falls off the platform. The other Flash game, Ruby's Party Room, is completely lost, with no footage of the game being anywhere on the internet, and the only evidence of existence being the thumbnail for the game. The footage of one of the dress-up games, however, could be this game, but I'm doubtful, as they look fan-made and no Ruby Gloom logos or anything are in sight, leading me to believe that they aren't official. The only reason we have the game thumbnails is because of the user Flashstalgia on the Lost Media Wiki forum. who documented the existence of not only the 2 lost Ruby Gloom Flash games, but many, many more Flash games from the Tago website that are lost and not playable in general. He found the game thumbnails by going to an archived version of the children's search engine blindcode.de, which is another German Flash game website that apparently used to host the Tago games. After searching around for a while, I found a higher quality screenshot of Save Ruby's diary on a Japanese blog website. I was able to save the image, giving us a better glimpse of the game. These 2 Ruby Gloom Flash games, along with most of the Tago Flash game library of the late 2000s and early 2010s, are now lost media, shrouded in mystery, and are no longer playable. If anyone is able to find playable versions of any of these games, especially the Ruby Gloom ones, please do drop a comment. That would be beyond appreciated. Promotional Ruby Gloom Tago CD. Here's yet even more Tago stuff. In 2008, Tago released a promotional CD which had Ruby Gloom content plastered on both the front and back cover, the CD itself, and even had a mini page dedicated to the show. Oddly though, there were no Ruby Gloom songs that were even on the CD. Instead, it was a compilation album of random songs that had nothing to do with the show. This probably only ever existed to promote the show on the Tago programming blog, to be honest, but why go so far as to plaster everything Ruby Gloom related under the sun, and not put any songs from the show? That's baffling to me. Undiscovered Ruby Gloom merchandise. This is referring to the dozens of possibly undiscovered Ruby Gloom merchandise there could be out there. Sometimes I stumble across Ruby Gloom merch that I've never seen before just when I thought that I've seen pretty much every single piece of Ruby Gloom related merch that seems to be out there at this point. I've been a massive fan for over 3 years, so I think I can say that. Heck, recently I've just discovered these Doom Kitty slippers on Pinterest that seem official, and I've never seen them in my life. I always love finding new pieces of Ruby Gloom merchandise, and for me, it's like opening a present for the first time, I guess you could say. The Savior's Ruby Gloom song. This is an interesting case of extremely obscure, potentially official Ruby Gloom media. In 2002, a punk band by the name of The Saviors released a 2-song single. Only 500 physical copies of the single were ever sold, making any of them extremely hard to come by. Among the 2 songs was a song titled Ruby Gloom, which is what you're listening to right now. There is no indication that this song was made for any official Ruby Gloom media, and if it was, it would have to be made for the merchandise era, since the merchandise began production in 2001, and it wasn't until 2006 that the show came out. I have a couple of theories as to what this song could be. My first theory is that the Saviors could have had no idea about Ruby Gloom the character, and purely by coincidence this song was made. Or they could have been commissioned by Martin or someone at Mighty Fine to make this. Some of the lyrics do sound like they would fit in the early Ruby Gloom universe. Definitely not Show Ruby though, because of lyrics like "something turns these women on." This lyric leads me to believe it could be either a song about early Ruby, since she was aimed more towards older audiences, or it could all very well be a coincidence, as previously mentioned. I have a hunch that it could just be a coincidence, but no one really knows outside of the band, Martin, and Mighty Fine, so we'll probably never know. Ruby Gloom card game. There was actually a Ruby Gloom card game titled Ruby Gloom the Game. It was published in 2008 by Mandu Games, and it was produced in Korea. In Ruby Gloom the Game, each player tries to get the lowest sum possible with their 6 cards in play, swapping and replacing them according to the rules. Whoever has the lowest sum wins the round, and whoever wins 3 rounds first wins the game. In a YouTube video uploaded in 2009 by Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower, which is actually the only upload of the game being played on YouTube, he demonstrates how to play the game.
In each round of the game, players are dealt 6 cards. They will then take one of those cards and turn it over. Now, at the end of a round, you are trying to have as few points in front of you as possible. The cards go from -2 all the way up to 10, and therefore you're trying to get as many cards, like I said, as few points as possible. But if you have 2 cards in the same column that have the same number, for example, if this one happens to be a 6, then both cards change into a 0. In the middle of the table, there's a discard pile and a draw pile. When it's your turn, you can draw the top card from the draw pile, or take the discard and replace it with one of the cards there. When you take a card, and after you look at it, you can replace it face down or face up. It's up to you. If you get one of these cards, this is a 10, you must take it and you must place it face up in front of you. So let's say once someone turns over all 6 of their cards, then the round is over. And everybody needs to turn over all 6 of their cards. So we turn over these cards like this, and this is a really bad score here. If someone has a question mark in front of them, at that point they draw a card from the pile and put it on top, and that's what it becomes. In this case, it becomes an 8. There are also a few cards that, for example, this card here says it equals the same thing as the card to the left of it. There's also one that says it equals the same thing as the card right to it. Like I said, there are -2 cards. And in this case, let's say this guy had a 10 here. Had he a 10 on the bottom, both these cards would have been 0. Anyway, all the players total up the amount of points that they have at this point in time. For the player with the smallest number gets a stone. First person to get 3 stones is the winner.
Ruby Gloom fan websites. On the actual Ruby Gloom website on the Wayback Machine, if you go to the 2004 capture and click links, we can see an area that lists 4 Ruby Gloom fan sites, these being called Ruby Gloom's official fan listing, Ruby Gloomed, private parts of Bloody Mary, and Nikki's Ruby Gloom page. Surprisingly, these fan sites were archived, giving us a look into the minds of actual Ruby Gloom fans from 2004, which I think is really cool to see. The first site, Ruby Gloom's official fan listing, is pretty bare bones, with only an image of Ruby in the background amongst a white void with text. It was a site where you could seemingly just sign up to be a Ruby Gloom fan on this specific website. There really isn't anything on this site too of note, except for these 2 little Ruby icons that I thought were neat, so we'll move on. The next site is called Ruby Gloomed, which I think is one of the most interesting and dedicated fan sites listed here. This is the page of a girl named Jen Gloom, who's a massive fan of course, Ruby Gloom. We see a picture of Jen herself as she sits in her backyard watching fish. I really like the design of this website, even if a bit simple. If we look to the top of the page, we see a tab titled Me and Ruby. If we click on it, we can see that it shows a blog entry explaining how she got into Ruby Gloom, which was from a friend giving her a Ruby shirt for her birthday. If we scroll down, we can see an image that she edited of herself and Ruby Gloom at Disneyland, along with a blog entry on the side. I'm not sure if she actually went there, or if this was just some story she made up, but either way it seems she at least had fun nonetheless. There are also more tabs for links that she enjoys, and a tab to contact her, which I'm almost certain won't work. I wasn't going to attempt to contact her anyway. This was just a quick skim through an interesting site. You rarely see sites like this anymore, and it's really interesting and fun to look at sites like this from the past. They seem so genuine. The next site, Private Parts of Bloody Mary, is kind of wild, with the name being a bit weird, but this was 2004, and this was just kind of the way people were back then. Before you enter the page, you're greeted with this ominous looking text that tells you to search for someone named Emily with your cursor, and then click when it becomes a link cursor. I was searching for a link for a while, but I couldn't find anything. Honestly, I was half expecting there to be a jump scare, as this area of the website kinda had that vibe, but there seemed to not be any. Luckily, there is an option to skip the intro, which I did, granting me access to the fan site. Upon entering, you're greeted with a picture of Ruby at the top and some album cover on the side. It lists the person, which seems to be named Mary's, favorite interests and links. There is a button that says Impressum, and if we click on the link, it's just a legal document in German, which I looked up, and it seems to be required by German law to have on any website there. Going back to the normal page, it also lists a couple of her friends and family. Below that, we can see links to sign and view guest books, and viewing the guest books gives us a glimpse into more about Mary. She apparently was a big member of the Ruby Gloom forum, which makes a bit of sense considering the actual Ruby Gloom website had her fan site listed under their links tab. She seemed to have been somewhat of a local celebrity within the Ruby Gloom community back then. Going back to the main page, There is one last link at the bottom called Strange Chat. Clicking this takes you to a blank page which only gives you the option to go back. The final fan site is called Nikki's Ruby Gloom page, and it takes us to a site with a Matrix-esque vibe, with Rudy Gloom being shown at the top of the website. It's unknown if this person misspelled Ruby as Rudy, but it seems as if the person running this website's name is actually Rudy, because they say it's their name at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and they also spell it like that throughout the entirety of it. I don't understand why the site itself is called Nikki's Ruby Gloom page when the person who created it is presumably named Rudy, but I digress. The paragraph at the center of the page reads almost like the dialogue of the Ruby Gloom pilot.
I live alone in a Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, with only a few crows and a rag doll for company. I can be heard playing records in the attic, and sometimes you can see me riding my tricycle on the roof, even though I'm frowning. I'm happy in my own way. In fact, I am so happy I could just die.
Interestingly, this dialogue can also be seen on the back of the Ruby Gloom doll boxes, which I forgot to mention in the Ruby Gloom doll entry. All of the links on the site just redirect to the Ruby Gloom website itself, and there's also a Yahoo email address which is also linked at the bottom of the site. Other than that, it really doesn't give off any Ruby Gloom vibes in my opinion, and the site itself is pretty bare bones. However, it still was really cool to check out these fan sites, as they gave a glimpse into not only Ruby Gloom history, but internet history in general. Ruby Gloom test animations. This is in reference to a couple of Ruby Gloom test animations. The first one shows Ruby with wild hair walking up to a static Doom Kitty and speaking. This one seems pretty official, however I wasn't able to find who made this clip sadly. The other clip was animated by Glamour Cat, who is an animator on the show. In 2010, she posted a Ruby Gloom animation test on DeviantArt. It's just a simple blinking animation of her slightly moving her head in the process. I thought these were just cool to share. Behind the scenes siren music video stuff. There used to be a behind the scenes video showcasing how they made the siren music video, which is now lost media. We only have 2 screenshots of the video today, which I downloaded from a Japanese website blog a while ago. In these 2 screenshots, we can see actors in Iris and Misery heads in front of a green screen. In the screenshot with Iris, we see someone either directing them to go somewhere or fixing the head. In the Misery screenshot, we see her playing a piano, just like she does in the siren music video. The only other evidence of existence I could find related to the video was on the modern Japanese Sony Music website, where it explains that the video clip of the behind-the-scenes footage is available for a limited time, only available from March 21st, 2008 to April 25th, 2008. There are links at the bottom, but none of those worked. I looked on the entire website and could not find any clips of the video. Deddy the Terrible Teddy Ruby Gloom cameo. So before we start this final entry, I'd like to give a quick content warning. Skip this entry if you're sensitive to the following themes. If you're still here, let's get into it. So, Deddy the Terrible Teddy is a comic series by musician Aurelio Voltaire. Deddy is the result of a Lovecraftian horror from space named Urkor Malravenous, who merges with a discarded teddy bear from Earth, which results in a horrific monster that, while cute and fuzzy on the outside, is a merciless killer on the inside. Within Volume 2 of the comic, which was released in 2004, we see a 2-page mini-comic titled Playing Doctor with Ruby Gloom by Mighty Fine. The summary of the short is this. Deddy passed out in Gloomsville due to getting too drunk, so Ruby took it upon herself to take him in and quote-unquote play doctor. Since he's a teddy bear, she puts a pullback string in him to make him say things that a normal and cute teddy bear would say. Deddy being Deddy, however, is not a normal teddy bear, and yells at Ruby to stop yanking on the string. We then see Deddy pointing a gun to his head, wanting to die because Ruby won't stop pulling the string. Deddy then gets angry and demands that Ruby fix him. She then obliges, calling for nurses to help her. The nurses then seduce Deddy, which at this point I was a bit surprised, but this was 2004, so it was a way different time than now. Anyway, after the nurses do that, Diddy tells Ruby that she might know what she's doing and asks for more. A bit gross, don't you think, Diddy? This was just a weird story all around, but since this was pre-show Ruby, things like this were kinda to be expected since she was more for older audiences. Thank you so much for watching. This has been a passion project I've been wanting to make for a few years now, and I'm so glad I was able to finally finish it. I have always wanted to share my knowledge of Ruby Gloom related topics and just obscure and lost media related things in general. If there is anything I missed that you felt was of any relevance, please do tell me in the comments below. I do have other plans for videos discussing more topics like these. If you want to see what I talk about in the future, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It would mean the world to me. Thank you once again, and see you later.